Behind every locked door lies a story the world was never meant to hear. Welcome to Behind Bars TV, where we uncover the hidden realities of the world's toughest prisons, untold inmate experiences, and the systems built to contain them. From Supermax facilities to forgotten penitentiaries, we reveal the truth behind concrete walls and razor wire. This is not fiction. This is the world behind bars. They say America has over 2,000 prisons, but there are some you'll never see on a map. Across this country are places built not just to punish, but to erase. Facilities so remote, so secretive, even families lose track of where their loved ones are. These are America's forgotten prisons, where the system sends you to disappear. They're not on tourist maps or prison tours. They don't appear in documentaries or news feeds. But inside them are thousands of men, buried alive in paperwork and silence. Stay until the end, because what you're about to see isn't just a story about prison. It's about what happens when a nation forgets that punishment has limits. The Vanishing System. When a person is sentenced in federal court, they rarely know where they'll end up. The Bureau of Prisons decides. It could be a medium security facility in California, or a concrete fortress in the Appalachian woods. But for some, the paper trail stops. Family calls go unanswered. Mail returns undelivered. And suddenly, they've vanished into a system that doesn't explain itself. "It's like my son never existed," one mother said. "They just moved him and erased the address." The line for one inmate fades out completely. These disappearances aren't random. They lead to forgotten facilities. Low-budget, high-security institutions designed to warehouse human beings far from sight and scrutiny. They call it corrections. But what it really means is disappearance with paperwork. The prison no one talks about. Hundreds of these places exist. Small, understaffed, rural prisons buried in forgotten counties. Many built as economic lifelines for dying towns. The locals call them the job factory. But inside, the reality is isolation on a scale the public rarely imagines. "There's no doctor here," one letter read. "We fix each other with salt and tape." Inspections are rare. Records are missing. And complaints vanish before they reach any court. If ADX Florence is the clean version of hell, these are the forgotten corners, where there's no one left to watch. The geography of isolation. Every location tells a story. Remote sites were chosen for a reason. Distance means control. If no one can reach you, no one can report what happens. Prisoners are shipped thousands of miles from home, sometimes by plane, severing every connection to the outside world. A red pin sits in the middle of nowhere. "The geography is the punishment," says one former warden. The land does half the work. For guards, it's a commute through wilderness. For inmates, it's a sentence that expands beyond the walls, into every mile between them and anyone who remembers their name. Buried inside the Bureau. The Bureau of Prisons oversees more than 120 federal facilities. But within that list are special housing units, transfer centers, and satellite camps that rarely appear in public reports. Many of these units exist inside other prisons, hidden in plain sight. Inmates call them the black sites. "You're still in America," one former inmate said, "but you might as well be overseas in a place no one admits exists." Here, inmates are kept under extreme isolation for months, sometimes years, without formal charges, waiting for investigations that never end. It's solitary confinement without record keeping, the perfect administrative limbo. The men who vanish. Thousands of inmates simply vanish from the searchable database every year, not because they escaped, but because their classification changed. They're moved to facilities listed as non-public. Their families are told, "He's been transferred." Transferred where? That's classified. Disappearance, wrapped in legality, is still disappearance. Inside, conditions blur the line between punishment and disappearance. No mail, no phone, no yard, just concrete, silence, and a memory of a world that stopped calling your name. The experiments in silence. There's a reason these prisons don't make headlines. They weren't just built to isolate, they were built to study isolation. During the late 1980s and 1990s, as the Supermax era took shape, forgotten facilities became laboratories of silence. Wardens experimented with confinement techniques later perfected at places like Pelican Bay and ADX Florence. Documents stamped confidential, behavioral response program. They wanted to know, how long can a man live without sound, without touch, without purpose? These experiments didn't need volunteers. They had inmates, men who were already invisible, lifers, transfers, the mentally ill. For months, they'd be locked in control units, small rooms the size of closets, with no clocks, no view, no human contact. Meals slid through slots. Lights never dimmed. Psychologists called it sensory reduction. Inmates called it dying in pieces. Scribbled writing on walls. Day 26, still awake. When guards entered, they wore earplugs. Even they couldn't stand the ringing silence. It was the sound of nothing. And nothing drives you mad. The forgotten within the forgotten. Inside these prisons, the most invisible people are often the sick, the elderly, and the mentally ill. They don't make noise, they don't make money, and they don't make it out. In one facility in the Deep South, medical logs revealed inmates with untreated cancer left to die in solitary. One man lost both legs to infection, still cuffed to a hospital bed. The punishment doesn't stop when the body breaks. It just gets quieter. Wheelchair-bound inmate watching dust in sunlight. Reports from advocacy groups like the Southern Center for Human Rights describe entire wings where the elderly live out their sentences without sunlight or medication. No therapy. No family visits. No oversight. One prisoner wrote, "I can't see the sky anymore, but I still hear the locks in my dreams." These are not maximum security threats. They're forgotten people, locked away until paperwork says otherwise. The guard silence. It's not just inmates trapped by the silence. Guards live in it too. In remote prison towns, corrections work is the only steady job. Generations of families pass the keys down like heirlooms. But behind that paycheck is trauma. Officers witnessing violence, neglect, suicides, and unable to talk about it. "If you speak up, you're done," one former officer said. "They'll transfer you to a worse unit or make you the target." Whistleblowers have described unofficial codes of silence, falsified logs, missing incident reports, and ghost counts of inmates who had died hours earlier. Even those who keep the keys are prisoners of the silence they enforce. One former sergeant told investigators, "After a while, you stop seeing people. You just see doors." The paper prisons. Some prisoners don't need walls to disappear. They vanish into paperwork. Bureaucratic errors, lost transfer orders, or system glitches can bury inmates in administrative limbo for years. In 2016, an internal audit found hundreds of inmates being held beyond their official release dates, some for months, others for years. Not because of danger, because the system simply forgot. "I was already supposed to be home," one man told reporters. But homes stopped existing. Even lawyers can't find them. FOIA requests are denied. The official database lists them as non-public, pending classification, or simply moved. When the database forgets your name, so does the world. The cemeteries without names. Every prison has a graveyard, but the forgotten prisons have cemeteries where the markers bear only numbers. Inmates die of illness, overdose, or age, and are buried behind a razor wire they could never escape. Families rarely get notified. Bodies are labeled unclaimed and interred in rows behind the maintenance yard. When a man dies here, the state buries more than his body. It buries his story. Even death doesn't guarantee freedom. In some prisons, remains are cremated without ceremony, ashes stored in cardboard boxes until someone remembers to send them home. But sometimes no one does. The boxes stack up in storage rooms for years. Forgotten men, forgotten ashes, forgotten lives. They vanished once in life. The system made sure they vanished again in death. The prison towns that depend on suffering. Rusted water tower painted with fading letters. "Welcome to Dry Creek, home of the state pen." For hundreds of rural towns across America, prisons aren't just punishment, they're survival. When factories closed and coal dried up, state officials arrived with a promise: a prison will bring jobs. And they did: corrections officers, cooks, maintenance crews. But at a cost no one talks about. If the prison closes, one mayor said, this town dies. Children playing within sight of a watchtower. School banners reading proud to serve. The economy grows around incarceration. Gas stations, uniforms, commissary suppliers, housing for staff. Pain becomes profit. The system doesn't just feed on inmates. It feeds on communities that can't afford to let them go. When reforms threaten closures, towns protest, not for justice, but for paychecks. It's the quiet dependency that keeps the forgotten prisons alive. The whistleblowers who vanished. Glimpses of leaked documents stamped, internal, use only. Every system that hides something relies on silence and punishes those who break it. Correctional nurses, clerks, and even wardens who spoke out about abuse often find themselves transferred, fired, or discredited. They made me disappear without leaving the building, said one former guard. Newspaper headline: Whistleblower found dead, no foul play suspected. From 2008 to 2020, dozens of staff across state systems tried to report medical neglect and falsified records. Most were ignored. Some simply stopped showing up to work. Their stories never made national news, because small towns protect their prisons the way cities protect banks. When punishment becomes profit, truth becomes contraband. The hidden industries behind bars. Conveyor belts and prison workshop signs reading correctional industries. Behind forgotten walls, entire economies operate in silence. Prisoners produce uniforms for the military, furniture for federal offices, even digital services, all for pennies an hour. In one facility, inmates built office chairs sold to government agencies for $450 apiece. They earned 23 cents per hour. Payroll ledger reading inmate pay, $12.64/month. It's not slavery, said one administrator. It's rehabilitation. Then why does it look the same? Replied an inmate advocate. Profits flow upward to state budgets, private vendors, corporations with contracts so buried that tracing them takes years. The forgotten prisons aren't just warehouses. They're factories where the product is invisible labor. And because the public can't see inside, no one asks who's paying the real price. The families that never stop searching. Mother dialing a phone that rings endlessly. For every man who disappears behind the wire, there's a family left waiting on the outside. Mothers, wives, children, all trapped in a different kind of prison, not knowing. They spend years calling wardens who never answer, writing letters to mailrooms that no longer exist, driving hours to facilities that deny entry. They told me he was transferred, one mother said. Transferred where? They wouldn't say. Car headlights cutting through fog toward a distant fence. Grassroots groups now map inmate transfers by hand, connecting dots the Bureau refuses to share. Every red line on their maps is a heartbeat, a family's last trace of someone the system erased. Even when the state forgets, love keeps counting. The Reckoning. Overlay text. 2.1 million people incarcerated in the U.S. The American prison system wasn't designed to forget. It evolved that way. Overcrowding, profit, bureaucracy, and distance created a perfect storm of disappearance. But cracks are forming. Whistleblowers are speaking again. Journalists are tracking missing inmates. Lawmakers are beginning to ask the question that once sounded unpatriotic. If justice happens where no one can see it, is it still justice? The forgotten prisons aren't ghosts, says a former warden. They're mirrors. Mirrors showing what happens when punishment outgrows mercy and bureaucracy outgrows humanity. The system built to hold men forever learned how to forget them. The question is, will we remember?
What you just saw is more than a story. It's a reality lived by thousands behind bars. If you believe in uncovering the truth, the kind hidden behind concrete walls and silence, then join us. Subscribe to Behind Bars TV and never miss a chapter in the world's most dangerous stories. Until next time, stay aware, stay informed, and remember, freedom and confinement are sometimes only a wall apart.